Bitcoin was created during a Saturn-Uranus opposition. That just means that Saturn and Uranus were exactly 180 degrees away from each other, which in astrology is the cycle of progress versus conservatism. So as I said, Saturn is kind of like conservative values. It's about hard work. Uranus is the rebel without a cause. Like Uranus destroys things just to throw things up in the air so that something new can come in. And so the cycle between Saturn and Uranus is this like rebellious cycle versus hierarchical conservative control. And Bitcoin was created when these two things were exactly in opposition with each other. And so Bitcoin is simultaneously very conservative and also very rebellious. And I feel like that is really like the interesting kind of dynamic that plays out in Bitcoin, where it's boomer coin, but it's also like the global monetary financial like revolution of our lifetime.
Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. I have the inventor of the claim that TA is just astrology for men on the show. I got Erin Redwing. Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2, Erin. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a delight.
So, I just tell everyone, if you haven't listened to our first episode last January, go back and listen to it because that has a lot of good context and introduction. We're talking about astrology. But Erin, I will invite you to try to do the song and dance again. Give me 2 minutes of like how you, an astronomer, became an astrologist and simultaneously woven the Bitcoin obsession with that. Give me some foundational context.
So I was in my previous life before going full crazy Bitcoin mode. I was working as an astronomer. I was getting my PhD in planetary science. I dropped out of it, so don't give me credit as Dr. Redwing. I did not earn the Dr. Redwing title, but I was working in astronomy for many years, and kind of a long story, but just sort of spiritual awakening. Got into astrology. Was living a double life for many years, where I was working in astronomy, practicing astrology, which actually primed me very well to become a Bitcoiner, because a lot of Bitcoiners have this weird thing where the people in their real life don't understand their obsession with Bitcoin. So I had that with astrology for about 5 years before I got into Bitcoin. And I got into Bitcoin because there was an auspicious Age of Aquarius ushering in the new age energy conjunction that happened on the winter solstice 2020. And at that time, that day was when Bitcoin started its bull run. It was when it hit its previous all-time high of 18K. And I just had a widget on my phone where I could see stock tickers. I saw that and I was like, let me learn about this thing. Maybe this is relevant. Went down the rabbit hole, never came out. And that's, 5 years now into the crazy Bitcoin world. I'm now a Bitcoin astrologer. So astrology got me into Bitcoin, and it still continues to be the lens through which I primarily look at it and understand it.
And this extends the culture, but I'm gonna, a lot of people, if they haven't already turned the episode off because they have some weird knee-jerk reaction against this, I'm going to play a clip from last interview, which, mind you, was recorded in January of 2025, January 1st, and he was on your predictions and characterizations of the coming year, and you gave something which was extremely premonition, and it's about a minute. So here we go.
In 2025, really, like something in March and April happens that's extremely chaotic, and I don't know what it's going to be because it's just chaotic energy. Like it's something very like earth shaking kind of. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know something will happen. That's like mid-March to early April. And if you look at, like, I have charts from Bitcoin, the US, China, Trump, whatever. If you look at all these charts, they all are experiencing like transformation as a result of, it's essentially a series of eclipses and a couple planets moving into new signs that happens in March and April. And they're all affected. So I don't know what will happen, but I assume the markets will be affected by that in some way. And then the summer is very positive. Like the summer is like, we get these little bursts of energy that feel much more like 2026 and like the transformation beyond. So I would expect this spring to, I think I said this in the Hell Money episode, but like January, February is like peak hopium. Like if you're looking for like the top of like the current cycle that we're in.
I'm going to sell the rumor. Quantum cats go to 10 Bitcoin and I buy another house. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like that's the January, February, I think is like, people are wondering how long this current thing will last. I mean, we're already a little bit down right now, but I think that's kind of like the peak for this current cycle of Bitcoin 100.
So I mean, if you were to listen to that episode,
which you should, because we really go into all the details.
We just like stop this and just replay that episode. I mean, so like for whatever reason, like not a lot of people were predicting this, and yet the stars aligned and told us to sell off the Trump inauguration speculation and hold off because there's going to be tariff trauma, tariff turbulence there. And I want to get right into like what is going on right now, because the reason I hit you up to record this podcast, which goes out on Wednesday, is because we're in the middle of another eclipse, and I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But vibes are very weird right now culturally. Yes. In Bitcoin, a lot of things. What is going on? What does an eclipse mean?
So I would say if you are someone who doesn't follow astrology, but wants like just one thing to look for that will help you understand the world around you through astrology, I would recommend looking at when it's eclipse season, because eclipse season is every single time it's the most chaotic time of the year. Eclipses happen in sets. So the new and the full moon of a single cycle are both eclipses every 6 months. If you think about it, if you're an audio listener, you might not see my hands here, but the axis that which the moon revolves around the earth and that the earth revolves around the sun are not like perfectly in line. They're like overlapping like this. And so you have 2 points in the plane where they're overlapping like directly. And that's where you have perfect alignment, where you can have exact eclipses, where the moon perfectly covers the sun in the case of a solar eclipse, or the moon is perfectly illuminated by the sun's glow around the earth in the case of a lunar eclipse. So every 6 months, we get this 2-week period between a new moon and a full moon, or vice versa. In this case, we had a full moon first, then a new moon, where both are eclipses. And that 2-week period of time is called eclipse season. During eclipse season, this is when chaotic, unpredictable external events occur. Historically, you would never coronate a king during eclipse season. For example, actually, the Babylonians used to coronate a fake king. If their king died during eclipse season, or they needed to put in a new ruler during eclipse season, they'd put in a fake king, and then they would like kill him off and then put the real king in later when it was safer. So eclipses they're not a time to, like, if you're a woo-woo astrology girl, you might be like manifesting during a new moon. Do not manifest during eclipses. Like that's not the time to do this stuff. It's a time when chaotic external events happen. And the sort of reason why this happens is to get you to notice things that you maybe weren't paying attention to previously, and kind of adjust your state of mind accordingly. Like it introduces new information to you. And usually it forces you. And that's why there's so much like hype and like news cycle and stuff that happens during eclipses. So like October 7th happened during eclipse season. The Trump tariffs happened during eclipse season. And now we have like the Charlie Kirk thing, among other things that have happened during this eclipse season. This eclipse season started September 7th, and the second eclipse is September 21st. We can talk about the September 21st eclipse because it sounds like this will go up before then. So yeah, we can get a little bit of context, because the 7th eclipse was impactful. I actually think the 21st one will be more impactful, potentially positively. So hopefully that's good. But yeah, that's kind of the overview of eclipse season. So again, like that's something that I just recommend people follow if they're interested in this stuff at all. It's always the time of year that I feel the most grateful to be an astrologer, because I have this context of like, this is why things feel so crazy right now. It's going to be over soon. Just don't panic. It's not the end of the world. But it is a time that you're supposed to pay attention to. It's a time when, stuff that's happening is meant to make you realize that something is maybe not what you thought it was. Broadly, what I think is happening this eclipse season is we are revisiting themes that have been coming up over the last 5 years. And we're getting this final look at them, and we're saying, is this the way that I want to react to this moving forward? I think especially since COVID, obviously this was happening before COVID, but I think especially since COVID, we have kind of, we've come up with our ways that we react to things. Whenever a big event happens, we have our knee jerk, are they on my side or are they on the other side? And depending on that, I'm going to have this feeling about it. I'm going to allow myself to access this side of my emotional empathy or not. And I think a lot of us are just in this pre-programmed loop where we don't even really think before we feel something. We don't even really process the thing that happens. We're just repeating the formula that we know, it's the side that we're on, whatever it is. And I think what this eclipse season is trying to show us, and broadly kind of the themes of this fall, are what behaviors, rules, thought patterns, that kind of thing, are you okay with leaving behind in that 2020 to 2025 chapter? Because 2026 forward is a whole new world where the way that you've reacted to things will not apply. Like the rules are changing so dramatically in 2026. And so we can't carry a lot of these formulas that we've cultivated in this COVID to post-COVID era into the new era that we're entering. And so really, I think what's happening with these eclipses is like, if you think about the Charlie Kirk thing specifically, it's kind of many different themes all captured into one event, right? It's freedom of speech. It's political violence. I mean, how many people have talked so glibly about like, oh man, why don't they just shoot Trump? Why don't they just da-da-da-da, right? Like it's that in such a visceral way. It's the fact that we open Twitter and we can literally see someone getting killed right in front of us, right? Like we've been dealing with that for all of COVID. Think about Palestine, everything, it's like, we're inundated with gore porn, essentially. There's many things that are kind of triggered by this, but I think it's meant to essentially encapsulate a lot of themes and force you to look at it and force you to figure out, how do I react? What am I okay with? What am I not okay with? Can I change something about the way that I always react to these things in order to be able to handle the future that we're entering? That was a long diatribe, but that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. You touch on a lot of themes. One, which is, I've been using this term, at least localized to the Bitcoin world. It seems like we have a reactionary movement within Bitcoin without a lot of self-reflection. Takes have almost been like just reactionary without attention to the humanity and empathy. But yet you hold this view that coming out of this eclipse season, perhaps it could be more positive, because I will say the reactionary visceral feelings, those seem like very like cheap ways of experiencing what's happening. Why are you positive? Do you divine this from the stars, or is this intuition thing that you think that the end of this eclipse season, you say on the 23rd, I think
21st,
the 21st, yeah, the 21st, mm-hmm. Why are you positive about that?
So I'm positive about the 2026 era because I'm generally a future optimist. I think it will be very uncomfortable for people that are averse to change. And I think that if you are someone who is in a cycle of allowing yourself to be propagandized to and inflamed due to whatever information you're intaking, and that's both sides, by the way, both sides are doing that, especially with this event, then it probably won't feel great to be inundated with all of the new energy that's going to be coming in. But I think for those of us that are kind of ready for that, and we've accepted that we are living through interesting times, and we're ready for that transformation. It's almost like, I sound like a Revelations kind of like doomsday Christian, right? But it's like, I think a lot of people that are into Bitcoin especially kind of yearn for that hyper Bitcoinization moment, even though they know that it will involve a lot of like transformation in probably catastrophic and destructive ways in order to get there. So since I'm a Bitcoiner, since I kind of have that optimistic view of the future, I'm looking forward to the new energy coming in and some of this older energy being cleared out. That being said, it is very inflammatory. It's a lot of air and fire. So think about like hot air, kind of aggressive, a lot of words being said that you can't take back or that cause issues. Some of the planetary transits that we're going through in 2026, the last time that we had something similar, not quite the same, but similar, was the Civil War. I think that makes a lot of sense with the types of vibes that we're getting. Obviously, I'm not like, okay, great, we're going into World War III, Civil War. Like, that's going to be so positive and awesome. But I think it's one of those things where we live right now with this like impending sense of doom. Do you know what I mean? Where we kind of think the future is going to be scary. We don't know what the future is going to be. In 2026, the future is actually here, whatever that looks like. And so, it could be a time to be fear-mongery and scared of, but personally, I'm not. So it's a combination of both planetary transits and sort of my own, I guess, personal sense of optimism, personal disposition that makes me excited for 2026. I will say, just as like a very quick example, there's a very famous astrologer, Andre Barbeau, who was one of the founders of kind of outer planet astrology. The outer planets were only discovered in the last 100 to 150 years. So those of us who do outer planet astrology, we are like living in the golden age of research for these things right now. And Andre Barbeau was a French astrologer. He died in 2019. And he was one of the first people to be really looking at the outer planet cycles and making bold predictions. He predicted the fall of the Soviet Union back in the 1970s. He said the Soviet Union will fall within a certain, I think it was a 3-month range, and he got it exactly. And he also predicted that there would be a global pandemic in January of 2020. This was back in the 1990s that he made this prediction. So Andre Barbeau, one of his biggest predictions was that the new age starts in 2026. So he's someone that I definitely look to also as like a, kind of the gold standard for my field. And he was extremely positive about 2026 is going to be a very scary year, but that's the beginning of the Age of Aquarius where we're fully in it. So, kind of another call out there, but all these things coming together, it's like the best I can do is just kind of encourage people positively, because it's not going to be a simple, easy ride. It's going to be chaotic, but those of us who are Bitcoiners that want hyper Bitcoinization, what else are you expecting?
Hey, Will here with Blockspace Media. Did you know that we have individual feeds for all our shows? If you're watching the Mining Pod, Bitcoin Season 2, or the Court Show, be sure to check out the individual feeds. You can find them on your podcast player of choice, whether that be Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. Just type in Blockspace Media and you'll find all our shows pop up, or just type in the individual show name like the Mining Pod or Bitcoin Season 2. Be sure to hit that subscribe and give us a 5-star rating so we can continue to bring you the best content in Bitcoin.
Yeah, you have many, many themes this year. And harkening back again to our conversation last January, you kept saying 2025 is this year of transition and it can feel very chaotic and tumultuous. It definitely has. And it's felt quite like a transitory year, and that things are never going to be the same. And at the same time, I hadn't really planned on covering this topic, but you brought up AI and the singularity. And what's surreal to me is that I've seen many of my, I would say really smart peers, people who are on the internet now, have difficulty in actually distinguishing between what is a language model talking. And even myself, a couple times, there have been videos where I will have to check it again and to make sure that it's fake. Do you think that is one of the major themes that is that's going to define the this next era that we're in? And what are your takes and thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think so the Age of Aquarius, which is this 2000-year era that we're entering into, it's the age of decentralization, but it's also the age of information. Those are kind of the two main Aquarius themes. Aquarius is an individual that that sovereign individual kind of decentralization thing that we're all about with Bitcoin. That's a very Aquarius theme. But Aquarius is also about knowledge and information. And so I think that the digital age is the age of information, where information is freely available and accessible to all. And that means real information, fake information, and the sort of in-between area where you get reality being created by perception and, everything gets confusing. So I think we are entering an era where there's no hierarchy between people that know and people that don't know. The people that know and have expertise are just as likely to be fooled as the people who have no expertise. I don't know how we're going to navigate that. We are just at the beginning of it. This might be a problem that we don't figure out until you and I are long gone. Like this might be kind of the question of the digital age, is how do you actually figure out truth in an era where truth seems malleable? Bitcoin, I think, is a very good solid rock in there, right? The don't trust, verify. That's always been something that's attracted to me about Bitcoin as like a Age of Aquarius astrologer. So I think that's a very important thing to know, that the transaction that you're receiving is definitely being received and everyone agrees on it. I think that's extremely important and extremely, extremely valuable when it seems like that will be difficult to have almost in any other category, basically. So one thing that does make me feel optimistic is right now, so Pluto is in Aquarius right now. I talk about that a lot. Pluto entered Aquarius in 2023. It will be there until 2044. And Pluto is the planet of transformation. It's a very difficult transformation. It transforms by pulling up the dregs from the underworld and forcing you to look at them and face them. But it does transform. And so it's my belief that right now, Pluto is basically doing the dirty work to kind of get us into the Age of Aquarius and transforming all of these Aquarian topics in our life. The children that are being born right now have Pluto in Aquarius in their natal charts. And I personally believe that the generation that's being born right now will be able to deal with the topics that we are struggling with, like what you're talking about with deep fakes, not knowing what's real, not knowing what's fake, getting super inflamed by something that you see on the internet because your nervous system doesn't know how to incorporate it into your physical life, right? I think that the Pluto and Aquarius generation will not struggle with these things as much as we do. And so I'm curious to see the kids that are being born right now, how they will grow up, because I think that they will be the first truly digitally native generation. And I think that they will be a lot more comfortable for it. So you and me, we might not get to like be on the other side of that. We're going to be the Facebook boomers that are like believing some weird ChatGPT image of Jesus shaking hands with Trump.
We could be the elders who tell about the before times.
Yeah,
and like,
exactly.
And, pass on, verbal tales and just like the myths of old.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Generation Beta started January 1st of 25. So this works with everything that you're describing. Talking about generations and time, you have another fun topic that you often like to chat about, which is the idea of the Saturn return. And what is that? And who's experiencing their Saturn return right now? May I ask?
So, me, that's why I'm so obsessed with it right now. That's the nice thing about astrology is like, you can use it to help other people, but you can also just use it narcissistically and use it to endlessly navel gaze at yourself. So the Saturn return, I've been doing a lot of videos about this on TikTok because I've been making a lot more astrology content on TikTok because I really do think TikTok is the creator's app. It's like the place to be if you want your message to get out there. And that's why they don't want kids to be able to access it. But I've been making all these videos about Saturn returns because I'm going through my Saturn return this year. And this is a transit that everyone goes through between the ages of 27 to 30. So it's like the end of your 20s into your 30s. And it's basically, just astrologically speaking, it's the time when Saturn gets back to where it was when you were born. So Saturn takes 27 to 30 years to go the whole way around the zodiac. And so it comes back to its original place. And Saturn is the father of karma, father of time. It's kind of like the daddy of the zodiac that like looks over your shoulder as you do your homework and makes sure that you're keeping up with everything that you need to do in order to stay on track. So when Saturn gets back to where it was when you were born, that's kind of, it's time to come back around and check on you and be like, hey, did you do all the hard work that you said you were going to do? No? Okay, then you're going to have a really difficult time with this final exam. Or yes? Okay, great. You're going to pass and you're going to go to the next level. So I think I wish more people knew about Saturn returns. Everyone knows about Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is like, who even cares? Honestly, I don't even
meme, and because people
the Mercury and Gatorade, whatever, it's just I don't even like, people ask me, I'm like, yeah, I guess it's a retrograde. It happens 4 times a year. It's like nothing, whatever.
Yeah,
but
that's about the cycle of a meme. People forget about it 2 months later. You can make it again. It's funny again. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, but like a Saturn return, that happens once every almost 30 years. It's a big, and I think that is really like when young adulthood ends and true adulthood begins. It's a really it's like the time where if you've just been resting on your laurels or, going places based on luck or charm or these things that you don't have to work hard for, those things start to run out and you kind of have to face yourself, or you have to face the life that you've built for yourself. So, I'm going through my Saturn return this year. So I'm like trying to get very spiritually aligned and do all the hard. That's why I'm making a TikTok every day, doing my hard work. But yeah, it's definitely, I don't know. I mean, your Saturn return was probably a couple years ago, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm 30. I'm 36 now, so I'm actually well into Saturn's moving away from me now. So
yeah, you're getting closer to your Uranus opposition, which happens when you're 42. That's the midlife crisis. I'll make a TikTok series about that too.
Yeah, we'll have to come back and talk about that in a few years.
Yeah, but I mean, I look at outer planets, as I said before, like I'm an outer planet astrologer, which just means like the gas giants on. So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Those are kind of my main focus. And the reason why I like the outer planets is because you get these longer term cycles, which means you can do your TA for girls and look at like economics, politics, society, and see the longer term cycles. But obviously those also play out in an individual's life, but it's like only once or twice in a lifetime that you get these types of transits. So it's interesting to see what happens when you have these society level energies pointing at someone personally. It's astrology is really the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. So who, I'll press a bit further. Who are some notable people in pop culture, politics, maybe Bitcoin, who are experiencing their Saturn return, or does this particular thing apply to? That might be interesting.
It applies to every person, right? So the area of life that your Saturn return shows up in depends on your time of birth. So this is why when you talk to an astrologer, it's not just about your birthday. They also need to know the time and location, because in order to create an exact chart of the solar system at the time that you were born and get all of the placements, you need that exact data, which is why Bitcoin astrology is so great, because we have that exact block time that Bitcoin was born at. But everyone goes through this, and then the area of life that it shows up in, as I said, depends on the time that you were born. So the series I did on TikTok that you're referencing, I went through all of the houses, which are the different areas of life, and I gave examples of famous people that had gone through their Saturn return and how it played out. And it was actually very eye-opening for me to do that, because I've experienced a lot of Saturn returns through my friends or people whose charts that I read, but to actually go through and systematically study each house and see how it played out for each person was very revealing to me about the kind of overall themes of Saturn. One of the things that I learned, and as I said, if you're in the age range of 27 to 30, it's happening at some point in there. If you're a little bit younger or a little bit older, you can contextualize this in your own life. But it's interesting to see the differences between people who do very well versus who do very badly. So like an example I can give that I did in that series was Steve Jobs and Bill Gates both went through their Saturn returns within 1 year of each other. They're both around the same age. But their Saturn returns played out very differently. So Steve Jobs, he's very known for being flashy, a marketing guy. He obviously has a huge genius when it comes to user design, like, user interface, user psychology, all those kind of things. But mostly what he was known for was this kind of flashy style of genius, right? Whereas Bill Gates, he's kind of like boring and sinister, like you're a little creeped out by him. But obviously Microsoft is a huge company that did incredibly well. And he's obviously very innovative in his own right. So Steve Jobs and Bill Gates both went through their Saturn returns in 1984 and 1985. And at this time, this was when Apple and Microsoft were at war with each other. Apple had just put out their 1984 ad where they released the Macintosh computer.
We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause.
And that ad did super well. It was a Super Bowl ad that January, and that was Steve Jobs' Saturn return that ad came out. But the Macintosh computer was like not up to snuff at all. Like if you actually bought one, you were like, what is this? Like this doesn't even really work. And so Steve Jobs was actually completely ousted from Apple by the end of his Saturn return that year, because it was just such a failure and he had committed so heavily to that bit. Bill Gates, by contrast, released Windows 1.0 the following year when he went through his Saturn return. And that was a huge success. And Microsoft got like complete market dominance during that time. And I really think the key difference between those two people is how much were they focused on day-to-day hard work, not flashy, extravagant displays, but rather like more conservative progress, I would say. And of course, like that dynamic switched 10 years later. But at that time, it really was like Bill Gates won over Steve Jobs. And I think that was just because Bill Gates was a much better, I guess, like worshiper of Saturn, as some conspiracy theorists would call him, regardless of the astrology context. He was kind of playing into Saturn's qualities a lot more at that time. So anyway, my TikTok series, I have a bunch of examples, but I thought that was the most interesting to see because I didn't even realize that they were so close in age and that they were going through such similar astrological transits, and just to see how differently they played out based on their personalities. It's yeah, as I said, gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think because Bitcoin will have a Saturn return. I don't know if I assume you've done a little legwork on this, but I don't know how much. My rough math says second half of the 2030s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you have any thoughts or comments on this?
Yeah, it's so Bitcoin Saturn placement is a very crucial part of its chart because Bitcoin was created during a Saturn-Uranus opposition. That just means that Saturn and Uranus were exactly 180 degrees away from each other, which in astrology is the cycle of progress versus conservatism. So as I said, Saturn is kind of like conservative values. It's about hard work. Uranus is the rebel without a cause. Like Uranus destroys things just to throw things up in the air so that something new can come in. And so the cycle between Saturn and Uranus is this like rebellious cycle versus hierarchical conservative control. And Bitcoin was created when these two things were exactly in opposition with each other. And so obviously, that makes sense given the time, right? 2008, if you think about what we were going through in 2008, it was very, very much that dynamic. But that's infused in Bitcoin's energy because that's when it was created. Just like how you're a Leo sun. And so the sun was in Leo when you were born. And so that infuses you with that energy. It's the same thing with Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is simultaneously very conservative and also very rebellious. And I feel like that is really like the interesting kind of dynamic that plays out in Bitcoin, where it's boomer coin, but it's also like the global monetary financial like revolution of our lifetime, So as I said, Bitcoin Saturn placement is very important. And so I'm curious to see, like, as we go through Bitcoin Saturn return, which we still have quite a while before that happens. But my guess is that Bitcoin, it's so hard to say with like ossification, like what does that even really mean? But my guess is that we will get a movement more towards conservatism within Bitcoin structure rather than its like radical ideals. Bitcoin went through its Jupiter return during the 2021 bull run. So Jupiter is the planet of luck, abundance, optimism. It's like a very positive thing to go through your Jupiter return. Bitcoin went through its first Jupiter return with that 2021 bull market. So, that one's a good, like Jupiter is the classic benefic. Saturn is the classic malefic. So Jupiter is positive. Saturn is sort of loosely bad. So we definitely saw that play out with the good side. So it's just a question of how that will play out for the Saturn return. But we still got time.
Tell me how should I trade Bitcoin over the next
just buy it
12 to 18 months? I don't know. What do the planets tell me about? You don't have to comment on it, but I will inject some speculation into this, like Bitcoin up or down over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky because I think so I think throughout the rest of 2025, I don't think we're going to see some major price action one way or another. I think we'll probably continue to just sort of crab around where we have been for the last month or so. It's not really until February 2026 that we're starting to get into the new energies, which I believe will be very positive for Bitcoin, but they will also be very chaotic. So, the episode that we recorded back in January, I talked about how there was this really like chaotic event that was happening in March and April, but then things would be okay by the summer. It's not that serious. It's just going to seem bad at the time. We don't have moments like that are imminently arriving. We have more slow moving, big energy. So, I don't know if I'm prepared to make a call like we're in the super cycle, but it feels a little bit different this time. I know we always say that, but this time feels a little different. So I suspect that we won't be seeing some sort of big flash crash and then rise back up like we did, like I kind of predicted earlier in this year. I don't think we're headed towards something like that. That's going to be, a major opportunity or downfall, depending on which side of the trade you're on. But I think all of this is generally good for Bitcoin. As I said, like we're moving into that new era that I think a lot of us have anticipated for a long time. So, is it going to be 500K by summer 2026? I don't know, but I think we're headed into an era that's a lot more positive for Bitcoin and an era where Bitcoin just makes sense, where we're not so early anymore. We're not just into it because we're ideologically aligned with it, but we're into it because we have to use it. It's a normal part of life. It's useful in our actual lives. That's kind of the era that I think we're entering into with 2026.
Yeah. The investor might call it the institutional bid, which is it's kind of boring, just kind of keeps going up. Nothing super crazy happens. But I would love to be wrong and that it blasts up to the upside, whatever.
Yeah, it could happen. I plan on going through very detailed 2026 astrology probably in like November of this year. So, if you have me back on January 2026, we can kind of go through like month by month and do the detailed analysis. One of the things I really want to look at is I want to do the astrology of some of these Bitcoin treasury companies, because I think that's where you might see a little bit more catastrophe going on.
I mean, Poor David Bailey's Naka is down 50% today.
Yes, eclipse season. Eclipse season.
Yeah, but he's always
riding the wave.
Yeah, he's riding the wave. Buy Naka on the 21st. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
I do want to look at the eclipse chart just because it might be useful for people to kind of
bring up.
It's relevant at this time. And then I think we'll also help people understand like how I make an astrological prediction, if that makes sense. Like you can see my charts, you can see all the math that goes into everything that I'm doing. So yeah, Charlie just pulled this up. So if you're listening, you won't see the chart, but if you're watching, you can see very clearly there's this kind of kite formation in the middle of the chart, right? That's not normal. Like we don't get geometric patterns like that in every chart. That's pretty abnormal as far as astrology goes. And the top of the kite that has that small, like bold blue triangle, those are the outer planets all working together. So as I said in the January episode that we recorded earlier in the year, I said, in the summer, we're getting this nice synergy between the outer planets where they're moving into new energy, they're moving into new signs, and they're all helping each other. That's that blue triangle. So at the top of it is Pluto and Aquarius, the first degree of Aquarius. You have Saturn and Neptune form the middle thing that also has the red line coming out of it. And then you have Uranus that forms the bottom of that. So that little blue triangle at the top of the kite, those are all the outer planets, right? Like Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, those are the furthest out planets. So these are the longest term energy, the most like societal, political, economic level energies, not day-to-day personal, I'm a Leo, you're a Virgo type energy, but, big changes. All of these planets entered into those new signs as of 2024 and 2025. So we have all this new energy and it's all working together. It's all like harmoniously, meshing with each other. But what you'll notice if you can read the chart more acutely is that they're all retrograde right now. All of those planets are currently retrograde. They're all going back. So they have a little R next to the symbol. That means that they're moving backwards right now. So right now, they're all kind of in a nice alignment where they're like, yeah, we're vibing on the new energy. Woohoo. That's what 2026 is going to be completely. But they're all starting to move back and they will all, except for Pluto, move back into their previous signs by the end of this year. So the way that I think about this is over the summer, we got this nice aspect that we're still feeling right now. We still see that blue triangle going where they're all working together, bringing in new age energies and kind of harmoniously doing so. But they all have to go back to their previous sign and kind of wrap up unfinished business. And so when I talk about things like these eclipses, bringing up themes from the last 5 years and asking you to look at them, to reflect on them, to let go what no longer serves you moving forward into a new chapter. That is what I'm talking about with the point at the bottom of the kite, which is like the red lines that go to the bottom. That's the eclipse. You can see the sun and the moon are both together there. That is the solar eclipse that's happening on the 21st. So basically you have this like harmonious little dance that all the outer planets are doing together. And then the eclipse is on the exact opposite side, almost like shooting a bow and arrow at it, right? Like it's kind of like hey, let me fuck that up a little bit. Let me just like shake things up and see if you can get rid of something. See if you can let something go that's preventing this dynamic from really flowing as much as it should. So, I'm using metaphors here because it's like would be very boring if I went through and kind of gave you all the technical.
I can't use all the specific language. You have to be,
I'm trying to sort of represent it like metaphorically, but you can kind of see what I mean, right? With I think the reason why I wanted you to show the chart is because I feel like the geometry of this just so clearly demonstrates the energy. It is. And so really the theme of this eclipse that's happening on Sunday, it's 12:45 p.m. if you're in California, 3:45 p.m. on Sunday if you're in the East Coast. If you're anywhere else in the world, sorry, I'm only giving US time zones, but it's Sunday. Basically, what it's asking for you to do is let go of a thought pattern that is outdated, that is preventing you from starting to vibe with the new energy that wants to just flow, wants to bring new things in. It wants to give you new opportunities. But if you're stuck in a mental pattern that no longer serves you, this is Virgo energy. Virgos are very type A, perfectionists. They can ruminate on things. If you're stuck in that pattern over and over and over again, and you keep hitting the same button, expecting the same emotional feedback, and you expect it to solve things, even though it hasn't solved things for the last 5 years, it might be time to just let it go. So I just wanted to show the visual because I think it does a good job of demonstrating that. But that's also why I think this eclipse could potentially be a lot more positive, because it implies a new beginning with that letting go. And also, since it's the last eclipse, moving forward, we're not going to have chaos as much after that eclipse. Like, we're in the chaos right now. Once that eclipse is done, then we don't have to deal with this for another 6 months.
But there's always another eclipse.
Yes, every 6 months. Every 6 months we get 2-week period that's eclipse season. So just, as I said, if you're someone who was saying, oh, things must be bad, Mercury is retrograde, it's probably honestly not that. It's probably eclipse season that you actually should be following. Sometimes they happen both. Sometimes you get a Mercury retrograde and eclipses, which is actually what happened in March, April of this last year.
And it felt like it.
It
Lord
did,
knows.
yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh, Bitcoin's only down to like 70,000 something. That's fine. And everyone else in it was crashing out because the S&P was down 10%. I was like, very surprised.
I know.
We live in a different world. Speaking of living in totally different worlds, I guess maybe as a capstone on this, invite you to reflect a little bit on the state of Bitcoin culture and discourse, because Bitcoin itself is a network, but there's people. And lately we've been arguing a lot. I'm in the middle of it. You've also put your two Leos. We both put ourselves in the middle of this. You don't have to comment on the filters per se. We've already done exhaustive covering on that. But give me some assessment or insight on just the culture in general, and what are your thoughts about what the Bitcoiners are saying these days?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can give a perspective that not everyone is giving, and that also applies to what I'm saying more broadly about the culture and how I see it astrologically. I think that, when we have this unbreakable polarizing binary where you are either on our side or their side, and depending on what side you're on, the other side is literally all feds and literally all evil and whatever. If you're stuck in that binary, it's very easy to just stay there for cheap excitement, I think I'm obviously on the non-knot side, right? Like I'm not running knots. Maybe I should, but I'm not running knots. I'm firmly on the other side of that ideological debate. But I think that the more that we are just continuing to engage in the same loops over and over and over again, we're not giving any space for something new to come in. And the reason why we stay in those loops is because it's emotionally satisfying for us to do the things that are comfortable, right? It's the same thing as if you need to go to the gym and you know that you would feel better if you went to the gym, your body is going to resist doing that. And your mind's going to come up with a million reasons why that's actually not the right thing to do, because it's uncomfortable and it's outside of your normal behavior. I think the same applies right now with the way that we're dealing with discourse in Bitcoin. Is nobody really knows how to make it better. Nobody really knows what comes next, but they do know that the other side are a bunch of fucking idiots, and they can dunk on them and quote tweet someone who said something totally stupid. And, we're all feeding it. So I do think that by February, March 2026, we will be out of it. Bitcoin is going through a transit to its natal Mercury right now. Pluto is currently on Bitcoin's natal Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication, connection, and networks. So I do think we're having this big transformation where all the gunk is coming up. This is how Pluto works around these aspects of the network for a reason. And once we're in Q2 of 2026, like we are past that transformation. So I suspect that by that point, we will have a much better way of having discourse about technical topics that doesn't just turn into a religious holy war, right? That's my hope. That's my hope, is that that's a transformation that's happening. But I think it's both the kind of societal level, everyone's stuck in their fights that they've been doing for the last 5 years, and also this specific transformation that needs to happen for us to figure out how the Bitcoin network should work and how we should communicate and connect concepts with each other in order to move it forward.
Erin Redwing, everybody. Erin, where can people find you and ask you all sorts of insane astrology questions and give their unsolicited thoughts?
So I am at Realizing Erin on X and also TikTok, where I'm more active these days because I love the Chinese spyware app. And I'm also a Bitcoin podcaster, How Money Podcasts. We post on X, YouTube, whatever. And I get my astrology and spirituality takes in there at least at one point during the episode. So, it might be an Easter egg that you have to hunt for, but it is there. But yeah, I'm around. I'm not going anywhere. Bitcoin culture can get pretty fucking bad, and I still will be a Bitcoiner. So, if you have deranged questions about astrology, DM them. Those are like usually the only DMs I answer are deranged astrology questions. So,
what does what do the planets say about knots and filtering? Okay, blah 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 blah. Enough about that.
Yeah,
Erin, thank you so much for coming on Bitcoin Season 2. Catch you on the internet.
Bye.